and milling around a little bit, but we've got a lot to cover. Can't hear me? Okay. I gotta see how to turn this up.
Can you turn up the mic?
Technology. Is that it? Okay, better, okay, better, okay, okay. Thank you, Johan. All right. Welcome. I'm Sarah Miller. This is our first in-person meeting, annual meeting since 2019. We last gathered here in October of 2019. Many of you have also been participating in the Zoom meetings that we've had in the intervening year. And we do have Zoom members with us here on Zoom as well. But I wanted to welcome everyone. That's one of the nice things. Well, there is a nice thing that came from COVID, and that's we figured out how to use technology in some ways that we hadn't imagined before. Anybody have stock in Zoom? I don't know if it's a publicly traded stock, but if it was, we should have gotten on that early.
It seems a little loud.
Anyway, our agenda today, we're going to have a short financial report and then a recap of what's been going on in the last year by our general manager, Chad Kaiser. And then our Vice President, Johan van Nimwegen, is going to provide a presentation about touring the lighthouses of the San Juan Islands on a schooner, which I'm looking forward to that. So I've mentioned a few people, and I want to introduce the board members. Board member Johan van Nimwegen, he's our Vice President. Thank you for rejoining the board. Johan was a board member for several years, including, I think, sat in every seat. Well, you might not have been the treasurer. Were you ever the treasurer? Okay, good. And Melody Monson, who is joining us via Zoom, she's our new treasurer. That takes the job that I used to have. Joanne Hamilton, also joining us via Zoom. She's our secretary and also the furnishings coordinator for the lighthouse. Julie Bacher, who is here. She's our merchandise queen, merchandise coordinator. I've heard merchandise queen thrown around a few times today because we have a lot of merchandise, and I will point out that much of it is on a 50% off sale. So if you ever wanted a t-shirt, see Julie in the back. Bob Larson, our transportation coordinator. Dwayne Klotz is our technology guy. He's joining us from Kennewick. Hi, Dwayne. Yes. Clapping is appropriate for Dwayne. He's done some amazing things this year, and you'll probably get to hear about him in Chad's presentation. Kathy Stevens is our rewards and recognition chair, and she is in Hawaii, also joining us via Zoom. And Bill Bjorklund, maintenance and restoration chair, also choir treasurer, which I'm really glad he sticks around. When I was in the treasurer role, he was invaluable, and he continues to be invaluable to all of us. And I'm Sarah Miller, and I have the honor of serving as the president of the New Dungeness Light Station Association. I did mention that our merchandise is 50% off, jackets, t-shirts. The one thing that isn't on sale is the hats, because those things, they go like hotcakes. I don't know exactly how hotcakes go, but they go pretty fast. And so I would encourage all of you, we all have these wonderful t-shirts that we love. And, you know, many of them are getting a little threadbare, or they don't fit us like they used to. I will warn you that we're going to be soon moving to an entirely new design for our t-shirts, jackets, etc. So those of you who like the classic styles, that vintage look, I recommend that you buy up the inventory here, because it will not be available once our new stuff is available. All right. All right. Melody Monson is joining us via Zoom, but she's having difficulty connecting. So she's our new treasurer, took over from me. Thank goodness. I was worried that I was going to have my hands in the money and also trying to be the president, and that never works out very well. So Melody has put her presentation together, and I am going to try to do a good job of presenting it instead of her. So let's see here. Kathy, can you remind me again how I get to the PowerPoint? Kathy is the other person who does like everything that needs to be done that I can't figure out on the fly. So she'll be bringing up the PowerPoint. Hiding, it was hiding under a pop-up. All right, looks good. Oops. Okay, I want to go back one. All right. Every one of the last few years, we've been doing a annual report, and basically, in order to get the numbers to report on the treasurer's report, our year ends at the end of August. And so this report goes from September 2021 through August 2022. All right, and you see we're transitioning. We've actually already transitioned to a new treasurer. Melody took over in May, and she's learning the ropes. I am nowhere near, I'm probably not as good of a mentor to her as Bill was to me, because Bill had been doing it for like 10 years and I was only doing it for 3 before Melody was able to take it over. So that's going to be my excuse. And in the meantime, Melody is picking it up like a champ. So we have, like everyone, been hit a little bit in our investment area. Investments are down a bit, but our financial health is still assured. We're going to be meeting with our investment advisors in the next couple of weeks. I don't have that appointment scheduled yet, but I should hear back from them on Monday for when we can sit down with them and see if we need to change things up a little bit. I know my own personal financial advisor is very busy, and I think most of them are these days, trying to figure out, okay, everybody wants to know, how nervous should we be? Our keepers fees increased from the 2021. It's still the most significant income source for New Dungeness Light Station Association. We did not receive any new grants since September of last year. And the income is around $185,000. So that is a little bit lower than it has been in the past. And that's good news. Well, I shouldn't say it's good news. It's not such terrible news, because our expenses have also been a little bit lower. Our expenses are around, 130,000. Transportation costs were increased. We did buy a new vehicle. I think it's been over a year ago, but we had to fit it out, and that happened in early 2022 or late 2021. So those costs are associated in here. And Chad will probably tell you about another new vehicle we bought. Let's see. Comparison year to year. So like I say, our income is down a bit, but our expenses are also down, and we remain financially healthy. We're continuing doing, the core of our business. There's nothing that is getting shortchanged. Our costs are just a little bit less than they have been in the past. So, any questions? All right. Well, then I would like to introduce Chad Kaiser, our general manager, who will go over the year in review for 2022. Look at that, I made a rhyme. Thank you. I'm sure she taught me how to do this somewhere before the platters got laid out, but I forgot.
All right.
Get out of your way. Oh, sorry.
All right. So this year is somewhat of a transition into closer to normal, well, except for the end, and you'll hear about that soon enough. But our primary business, our primary operation is we run a light station. We're a volunteer organization, but we are responsible for the day-to-day maintenance, the day-to-day upkeep, and transportation to and from a lighthouse. And that keeps us very, very busy. Early in the year, we had a pretty decent or pretty interesting occurrence. We had snow out at the light station. And for many of you that have been out there, you realize that's fairly unique. When we do have snow, it doesn't stick around very long, but this year it did stay around for a better part of the week. And this happens to be a snap from our web camera. Every once in a while, we get some unique requests from our partners in the area. And in March, I got a call from the Clallam County Parks Department at the base of the spit. And they asked me if we would help them rescue a picnic table. I didn't think that sounded very unique until I realized where the picnic table was. It was about 2/3 of the way down a 100-foot bluff. And myself and the park manager, along with, I think Johan, you were part of that day also, we climbed 1/3 of the way up the bluff and put our table from one of our trucks on the picnic table and slowly drug it down toward the beach. Now, the picnic table ended up there because some teenagers that happened to be camping at the campsites above the bluff thought it'd be a fun idea to pick up the 300-pound picnic table and toss it over the bluff. So that's one of the things we ended up helping out with earlier in the year. And notice we ended up using our silver Dodge. Again, that will be more significant later in the presentation. One of the other large changes that we did this year is we decided, after a very long time of occupying a building down at Klein Spit, as you see, it's a 2-car garage, and we've occupied that building since I think the late 1990s, when the U.S. Coast Guard vacated the building. And we had one of our boats stored in that building along with our septic trailer. And it was a very handy building to have, convenient to store things down there. Also convenient to have the boat close to Klein Spit to put it in and out of the water. And over time, and specifically over COVID, we found that the building was being broken into over and over again. And we were repairing the damage from the break-in. We were repairing the damage and some of the missing tools that were gone. So we made an organizational decision to actually move out of the garage. The garage itself sits on property that belongs to the San Juan Hunt Club that owns most of Klein Spit, but they allowed us to occupy it at no cost to us, which was very fortunate. But we did still have to pay for the power, and we had to pay for the upkeep of the building, and we had to pay for insurance. And we found that every time we used one of our boats, or every time we used one of the trailers that was in that building, we ended up having to go back to our office anyway to rinse out a trailer or to rinse off a boat. So it was a round trip anyway that we decided we didn't need to have. So along with some, I think a combination of grant money and with some COVID relief money, we ended up purchasing a container, a 40-foot shipping container that we can now store at our office location. Johan owns the property at the office and has allowed us to place it there, which is very fortunate. But in this way, we no longer have to pay insurance on the Klein Spit building. We no longer have to maintain the Klein Spit building, and we no longer have to pay for power, which ended up being about $50 every month for turning the light bulb on and off for about 2 minutes. So now that container is sitting just a couple of yards away from the office, and it's large enough to both fit the same boat that was in the Klein Spit garage, but the septic trailer also. And in addition to that, we've got some of our gas tools that we're transitioning away from at the light station. So it's a bit of a change in our operation, but I think it's a good change. It was very interesting to fit it into the location where it's at the transfer station, because when you see one of these 40-foot containers out on the road, they don't look that large, but when you try to thread them into a small spot, it gets very, very interesting. And even after the container was laying down on the ground, we ended up having to move it around where it was sitting, and that was difficult. I talk about the septic trailer that's in the Klein Spit garage, but now in the shipping container. And this is myself and Sarah, and I believe Glenn helped us out this time with the spring septic pumping. We maintain a light station, and a light station that gets between 8,000 and 10,000 visitors a year. And part of that is the plain and simple things of having to take care of the septic system. And we have to pump it twice a year. And now with this trailer that we have and the pump that we have and some experienced volunteers, this is a process that goes fairly easy. I won't go as far as to say that it is fun, but it's fairly easy. It's not my definition of fun, no. It's required, not fun. Another significant event we had this year was, fast forwarding to June 13th of this year. It was the day that marked the beginning of the Race to Alaska, which is a sailboat race and a human-powered race of small craft from Port Townsend all the way up to Alaska. It's a great event, but not when you start it at the beginning of a gale warning. So what you see up on the screen right now is the actual warning that was issued the morning they started the race. And many of the participants in the race never made it to their first stop, which was Victoria, Canada. They had to be plucked out of the Strait of Juan de Fuca by the US Coast Guard, and via helicopter and via boat. Many of them were in quite a bit of danger, and they ended up sheltering in place on Protection Island and Discovery Bay and Swim Bay. And it ended up that 13 of them, 13 people that is. I'm not going to my next slide.
Is that due to the weather?
Yeah, they had to shelter. Let's see. See if that'll get me back. Yeah, that'll get me back. All right. So 13 of the race participants in, I believe, 5 or 6 boats ended up instead of going over to Victoria, coming down around the corner and sheltering in Dungeness Bay. And they had to shelter at the lighthouse for 2 days until the winds were calm enough for them to make that crossing over to Victoria. And here you see on the beach a couple of the boats that had sheltered. They pulled them up into the logs, and then they ended up camping out both on the lawn of the lighthouse, and some of them ended up staying in the lighthouse building itself. That is not a typical operation for us. That's not something that's typically open to the public, but these folks didn't have any other option. Now, even though the wind was not conducive for them going over to Victoria, as you can see, the weather was beautiful. The weather was absolutely stellar, and we happened to have a low tide. And that day, the weather was beautiful, we had a low tide, and Sarah and I ended up having an afternoon free. So we plunked our heads together and decided we were going to have the lighthouse pay for some pizzas and some breakfast materials for these folks that were stuck out there. And so we showed up with our truck, a few hot pizzas and some other supplies for them. And they were extremely appreciative. So appreciative, in fact, that we decided to put them to work. So this was one of the tasks that we decided to have them help with. A couple of them decided they wanted to mow the lawn. One of the big jobs we had them do is the interpretive trails around the property have logs that kind of denote the edges of the interpretive trail, and over time they end up degrading. So we had them replace a bunch of the logs on the interpretive trail. They were happy to do it because, you know, they were all ramped up to do this entire race up to Alaska, and now they're just sitting twiddling their thumbs at a beautiful location, but at the light station. So something to occupy their time was appreciated by both them and us. And this gives you an idea of how small some of these craft are. I mean, can you imagine going from Port Townsend to Alaska only rowing? And so you understand why a gale warning would be so dangerous for these folks. And this is them as they're leaving the lighthouse. Now, several weeks later, maybe even a month or two later, we received this pennant, this Race to Alaska pennant, and everybody that had sheltered at the lighthouse signed the pennant, sent it to us along with a thank you letter. So that's, you know, it makes us feel pretty good. They at least acknowledged that that they enjoyed their time out at the lighthouse. Also, this year, we were finally able to make use of some of our grant funds. Sarah had mentioned that we didn't apply for or receive any additional grants this year. Part of the reason for that is because we had grants that we had yet to spend. Because spending grant money and having contractors do work out at the light station during COVID was extremely difficult. And it finally in spring of 2022, we were able to get one of our major projects accomplished, which was the full replacement of the gutter on the south side of the lighthouse building. You can see where the scaffolding is set up right there. And that entire gutter side to side had to be fully replaced. It was an integrated gutter, that is, it's behind the edge of the roof. It was an integrated gutter that was solid copper. It was solid copper supported by cedar. And the copper itself had become brittle over time. You have to remember this gutter was put there in 1856, 1857. So it was the same gutter the entire time. One of the issues that we dealt with is that when this gutter was designed, it had a downspout on either end, both the near end and the far end from where you're looking at this image. But as they were transitioning away from making use of all the rainwater that fell on the roofs and putting into the cistern to the artesian well that's out on site now, they did away with one of the downspouts, specifically the downspout on the far side of the building here. And as such, water collected in that side of the gutter, and it collected and sat and sat and sat. And then you have a brittle copper gutter that develops cracks and then water sits in it. So it leaked. and it leaked into the soffit, the underside of the roof there, and it caused some leaking and it caused some rotting. And this is the first part of the process in replacing not only the copper gutter, but the downspouts and some of the wood underneath. And you can see here in these pictures, a series of them here, how absolutely beautiful those gutters were when they first put them in. And I'm glad I took pictures because it was simply a matter of days before they turned brown in the salt air out there. Here you get a good chance to see not only the new gutter that they're putting in, sitting up on the roof itself, but you can see what the wood looks like underneath the copper. Now, when we went out there, we had fully anticipated that when they removed the copper, that the wood underneath would be rot or spongy and in need of replacement. And what we found is that it was not. For the most part, it was in very, very good condition. And part of the reason was the copper gutter to begin with, and the fact that they used close grained cedar as the support structure underneath the gutter itself, underneath the copper. And almost all of the cedar we ended up retaining. There's some areas on the soffit underneath in which we will have to replace some of that wood, but it was in much better condition than we had anticipated. And everything that they used was solid copper, and it was gorgeous, again, until it sat out there for a couple of weeks and turned brown. But that's why we have this picture, so you can see how nice all this was. And this is part of the downspout. It is a little difficult to see in this picture, but you can see the new downspout that they put on the near side there. Again, they put another downspout on the far side. And all of this work was done by Copper Creek. And Copper Creek is a local business. They're located in the Carlsberg Business Park. We've used them in the past. They did some of the design and some of the construction of the stand for our 1,000-pound bell that we have out at the light station right now. They've done good work in the past, and this project is a continuation of good work that they've done. I'm happy to speak well of contractors that work out well for us and do a good job. They did a superb job. Not only did they do a good quality job, they did something that I never thought that they would ever have needed to do, and I didn't think they needed to do, but they first quoted this job in 2019, and they stuck with that estimate in 2022. So that saved us several $1,000s with this job alone. And as such, we are in the planning process of using the very same contractor to replace additional downspouts on the building. Over the years, the copper downspouts had been replaced with PVC or with tin or with lesser materials. And Copper Creek has now given us an estimate that is within reason for us to replace almost all or all of our downspouts with copper downspouts. So that would be a good change if we can make that work sometime within the next year. Now, as I say, we run a light station, and that means everything from pumping the septic to transporting keepers to repairing boat trailers, apparently. So we have a 15-foot aluminum skiff, and it's got a 40-foot or a 40-horse outboard on it. And over the years in using it, the trailer, when we purchased it, was used to begin with and was well used to begin with. But it just came to time that we needed to do some service on it, specifically with the springs and some of the fastenings. We're dipping this thing in and out of salt water every time we use it. And even though we rinse it, it still corrodes pretty quickly. And in this picture, you can see the spring was really the thing that we were worried about, because several of the spring leads had cracked and snapped. So using some local, actually using A1 Auto Parts in Swim, we were able to source all the material that we needed, replace all the bolts, all the springs, and all the hangers, and we're able to winch our boat back up on the trailer, and it ended up working out quite well. Part of that process was doing maintenance on the boat and the outboard itself, and the boat hadn't been in the water for over a year, So Al Hamilton, another one of our past board members and a good volunteer, he and I took the boat out to Lake Crescent in the middle of the summer this year, just to make sure that it was running well, and it was not. We got out there and it was probably 30 to 40 minutes of struggling with the engine to get it running well, simply because it had old gas in it for the most part. But once we were able to run the old gas out and clean out the injectors with new high quality fuel, it ran very well, and it's now ready to run anytime we might need it to go out to the light station. Sarah had mentioned that we purchased a new vehicle this year. This is one of the new vehicles that we purchased. We'll talk later about the other one. But this is the 2011 Suburban that we purchased. It ended up being an ex-government vehicle. And as she said, we purchased it in 2021, but with COVID issues, we ended up not being able to fully fit it out with graphics and a winch and all the materials that we needed to get it beach ready until early in 2022. And at that point, I guess at this point too, we still have 4 vehicles that are in our lineup. The 2011 is our newest, and that's on the far end. The 1993 Suburban, which is closest to us there. We will be selling sometime soon, I hope. But it has really saved us recently, so I'm glad that we have it as an option. We'll talk about some more truck issues later. One of the other issues that we touched on last year at the light station was water quality and U.S. Coast Guard testing standards. We have new testing standards that we have to apply out at the light station. The water quality has not changed, but the standards have. Without having a 2-hour conversation about that specifically, suffice it to say that we have started a new testing protocol. We're testing more often. And in doing that, we've changed some of the systems out at the light station. Take note of the spigot on the sink here. One of the things we ended up doing is we changed out to a new spigot on that particular sink in the west apartment. That's our testing location. So to avoid any issues with future testing, it was good practice, and we were advised to change out that spigot, specifically because the old spigot here had what's called a mixing valve. It's a single valve that mixes both the hot and cold water, and that can be a place that non-harmful bacteria can grow. So we switched out to a different spigot where it's 2 individual valves, and that's worked out pretty well for us so far. One of the other issues was, now that we're applying all of the state water quality standards, the state recommends, I guess recommends that we change the outfall to the cistern. The outfall to the cistern is supposed to be double the height of the width of the water coming out. And in this circumstance, it didn't meet those standards. So we used a saw and cut down the outfall of that box that you see in the foreground, so that the water had a larger distance between where it comes out of our cistern and where it actually goes into that box. And here you can see that we installed a 4-inch wide pipe, and that 4-inch wide pipe meets all the standards for the state. And that's actually the picture that Sarah took that we sent to the state, so that they know that we now qualify for the drinking water standards. We're going to transition into work week now. Every year, I'm walking out of frame, I can see. Every year we have a single week that we set aside where we don't have regular keepers out at the light station, and we have large work projects that we take care of. One of the largest this year, if not the largest, was headed up by Dwayne, our board member. His technical skills were perfectly placed for this particular project. What you can see in this particular image is we have a QR code taped to the wall, and we have a tide chart on the desk. We also have a paper visitor's log on the right-hand side there, and a donations box on the table. And all those things are good, but Specifically, the visitors log ended up being not as useful as it could be to our organization, because we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, really thousands of people a year that would sign into that guest book. And well over half of them would leave contact information, their name, where they were from, how long they were staying, their email address in that logbook. And it was very difficult for us to utilize that because it was a gigantic amount of data input that would have to be done on that. And we never really utilized it the way it could be used. And Dwayne came up, that's a whole other story. Dwayne came up and had a proposal to start a digital log and digital information for people so that we could utilize it and people visiting could utilize that easier. Now, the story behind this is that a lot of wiring had to go in to the end result, and it meant that we had to do a lot of that underneath the lighthouse. So I was volunteered to do some work underneath there, which meant crawling in and out of a very, very small opening.
Anytime Chad says we and you see an opening that small, we all know who's going in there.
Yes, it was me. But your name was invoked several times, Roberta, because I went in the other side. I went in the west crawl space of the lighthouse. And I think we said something to the effect that you were the last one that may have been in there. So before I went in there. But although it's a little hard to see right here, and I know Johan has a slide that represents this also, this is the end result of a lot of work by Dwayne, and I can't thank him enough for what he did. On the desk is a digital log. It's basically a tablet, and it has about a 6 or 7 questionnaire that you fill out, along with inputting your how many people are in your group, where you're from, and things along those lines. And that is not only available to keepers every day, but we can access that from the office at any time. And the screen that's now hanging on the wall it scrolls through a bunch of different information that's handy for hikers, especially. Our donations page is the one that you can see up there right now, along with a QR code, so people can scan that and give us donations or purchase items from our website. Also, it scrolls through tide information and weather data, both weather data from our weather station that's out on site, so it's current. It also scrolls through marinetraffic.com. So when you're looking at some cargo ship going by the lighthouse, you simply look at the screen here and it will tell you what the ship is, where it's going, and how fast it's going. So it's really good information for our keepers. And all of this can be slightly modified based upon what we see we need in the future. If we need to put another website up on the screen, we can do that. Or if we need to take one down, we can do that. Or change the information on the sign-in log. It's been extremely handy, so I'm very thankful for that. In addition, we always do a ton of work out at work week. I'll never touch on everything that we did, but this was Linda doing a thankless but very important job of removing the grass from around all of the sprinkler heads. This is a job that Bob Larson used to do many, many times in the past. So it's been continued. And it's surprising how fast that grass grows in and starts to strangle those sprinkler heads. But it allows them to work better, to pop up and go down better. We did a bunch of work on the roofs. We ended up repainting at least one of the chimneys. The intention was to do more, but we ended up running out of time. We seem to have a distraction. I'm not sure what that distraction was. Here's Linda working again, doing some additional scraping and painting on the oil house. She and Sarah primarily did a bunch of work on that, and I believe Julie also did some work on the oil house. It seems to be a perpetual job. You've got a metal building out in a saltwater environment, and it always needs maintenance. This is Sarah. I'm not sure whether she's working or she's having fun.
I'm having fun.
She's having fun. Using the lift that we brought out for work week to get some of the peaks of the oil house, and just a couple of nice pictures from work week. In addition to outdoor work, the Blake room, which is the downstairs bedroom in the keeper's quarters, every couple of years we change out the beds, and this year it was the turn for the Blake room. We ended up getting I can't remember the brand name, but we ended up getting a Casper bed, which ends up being in a box, which makes transport out much easier. This was Mark. I think he was dressing up for one of our dinners. He thought it was very important to wear his suit that night. You know, his suit, t-shirt, and socks, of course. It's very hard to see for most of you here. Online, it might be a little bit easier to see, but this is a small sample of the work that we do during a regular work week. Some of this gets done every single year, some of it's new, but you know, working on the generator, to changing the oil on the generator, and exercising the generator, mounting the television like Dwayne did, doing a bunch of painting, updating paperwork, replacing beds. And this is just a small sample of work that we did. We changed out a mower. We're slowly transitioning away from our gas-powered mowers out at the light station to battery-powered mowers, which is going very well. The volunteers out there love it. This year we bought another battery-powered mower and got rid of another one of our gas-powered mowers. Clearing logs, working on the grill, replacing light bulbs, sweeping and cleaning deeper than you would do for a regular keeper. Bill Bjorklund this year ended up changing out our Dyson hand dryer. We had a very good, fairly expensive, but very good Dyson hand dryer, and it worked well for us for about 10 or 11 years, and it ended up dying this year. So we ended up kicking out the $1,100 or $1,200 replacement for that Dyson hand dryer out of our funds, and replaced it. So now we have a hand dryer again out there. This was the work week group this year. I think there's one or two folks that stayed over for the second week that aren't in this picture, but that's the group of us. Now, probably one of the most significant jobs is Marie Moran and Joanne Hamilton ended up being the designated cooks for our week, and that is extremely important. When we have somebody cook, it means that all the workers do not have to spend time preparing their meals. They can spend their time working, which I appreciate greatly. So that is a very important job. And I want to say thank you to all the volunteers that were out at work week this year. We got a ton done. That is well deserved. Now for a little story. So we had only intended on purchasing one truck this year, but maybe two is required. So our organization saves up money every single month for a new vehicle, for whatever the next new vehicle is. And every time we seem to purchase a new vehicle, it's about $10,000 more than the last, even though our vehicles are usually at the newest 10 years old. But they just tend to get more and more expensive, especially when we end up putting winches and lights and lifts and tires and things like that on them. And at the beginning of work week this year, this is kind of backtracking a little bit, at the beginning of work week this year, while driving out to the lighthouse, this is a representative photo, we're actually going back this time, but we were using our primary vehicle, our silver Dodge pickup truck. We've had it for about 11 or 12 years now, and it's our go-to vehicle. It's the one we use more than anyone else, and as such, it takes a little more wear than our other vehicles. And at about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, on the way out to the lighthouse for work week, we had three of our vehicles. We had our new Suburban, our old Suburban, and our silver Dodge, which you see in the picture right here. And as we were driving up there, we were towing our lift with the silver Dodge and driving up the soft beach, and noticed that there was some smoke coming out from under the hood. We stopped, We opened the hood and there were flames under the hood of the Dodge. Now, to be very honest with you, we don't know what caused the fire, but it was a fire that was involved with the electrical. It may have involved some transmission fluid. We truly don't know because by the time we opened the hood, the flames had melted most of the evidence. But we ended up using 4 fire extinguishers, 2 of which we had in our trucks and 2 of which we got from the station. And that's the good news. We've got fire extinguishers on hand, and we were able to get this fire in hand and disconnect the battery, and we were able to put the fire out. That's the good news. The bad news is when you get closer, there it doesn't look so bad. There it looks like, oh, what happened? No big deal. But there you see that all the electrical components, all the plastic under the hood melted into a goo. And unfortunately, that meant that the vehicle was not going to run. Remembering that the vehicle is out on the beach at the lighthouse. So we had to wait a couple of days until the next low tide. And I forgot it anyway. I had a slide in here showing what we ended up doing. We ended up taking both of our Suburbans and connecting them with straps. And then we strapped those at the very back would be the silver Dodge, and we towed it back. And it is now back at our transfer station. And fast forward a month, the insurance company has declared it a total. They're reimbursing us, which we're thankful for. But this all occurred during work week while we were out at the lighthouse, and we're wondering, this is our primary vehicle. It's the one we use more than anyone else. We need a replacement fast. And we ended up doing a lot of online research, and we're able to find a very similar vehicle. This is the vehicle that had the fire under the hood was a 2003 Dodge. This vehicle is a 2004 Dodge. We ended up finding it at a car dealer in Spokane. So we returned from a week's worth of work out at the lighthouse on a Saturday afternoon. Sunday afternoon, I was in Spokane, had been driven by volunteers to SeaTac, flew to Spokane, inspected the vehicle in Spokane, got in it, filled it with gas, and drove back. I was back in swim Monday morning with our new truck. And since this, actually the truck is here for those of you who are here, it's around back. We used it already. We used it to transport all of our merchandise to the event today. But that conveys how quickly we needed to replace that vehicle. And fortunately enough, it appears that this vehicle is going to work fairly well for us. We're about 80% of the way done with making it beach ready. And fortunately enough, we're going to be able to recycle many of the things that were in the other vehicle, like the winch and all the safety supplies and almost everything, because the 2 vehicles are so similar. So it is, we're just hoping that this vehicle will last for another couple of years until we cycle through to our next new vehicle. So we had to scramble, but I think we did a pretty good job of finding replacement in short order.
And who got the joy of trying to steer the Dodge with no power steering?
Sarah got the joy of doing that.
All week, so I was ready.
So what we ended up doing in that particular circumstance, I'm pretty much done. I just have a couple of other placeholder photos here, but what we ended up doing is Craig Palmer, myself, and Sarah were in each one of the vehicles. And Craig was in the front vehicle. He was in the new Dodge, or the new Suburban. I was in the old Suburban, and I was number 2. And Sarah was in the new Dodge, or the 2003 Dodge, the burnt Dodge.
The barbecue.
Yeah, the barbecue. Yes, our dark humor steps in once again. But what she didn't tell you is this was the middle of the night again. It was a low tide in the middle of the night, and there was condensation on the window. So, and the truck's not running, so there's no power steering, there's no power brakes, and there's no defrost for the windows. So she is, you know, manhandling the steering wheel, which she said wasn't as bad when we were actually moving, but when it was standing still, it was hard to steer. And what we ended up doing is we ended up, all three of us called each other on our cell phones so that we could hear what everybody was going through at the very same time with an open line, so we didn't have to press any buttons or anything like that. So we could have both of our hands on the steering wheel. And it really worked out much better than I had feared it might. It pulled fairly well. The best part was that it ended up being a firm beach that night, a firm, clear beach. So we were fortunate in a lot of regards. Also, Craig Palmer, who's one of our drivers, is a stellar driver. And you know, Sarah and I are talking about, you know, how we're going to do this and what we're going to do. And Craig just kind of looks at Sarah and I and he goes, "I've done this before. You let me know when you're ready to go." So, so it worked out pretty well. As well as an unfortunate circumstance like that really could have. Really here at the end of my presentation, I just wanted to let you guys know that it's not just the folks that are in the room that have a good look at the lighthouse on a regular basis. Many of the weather stations use our web cameras and or pictures of the lighthouse as backgrounds for their nightly weather reports. So it's something that we do appreciate because it just puts us in the public eye. And that's how we run this station, is through keepers fees and donations and grants. So being visible is extremely important to us. Now that's the end of my presentation. At this point, we usually take questions. Do we want to do that at this point? Or
questions? Sure.
If anybody has questions for me, I'd be happy to attempt to answer them.
Just don't ask us why the thing caught on fire, because that's a good question.
That's
All right.
fairly unique.
Yeah. All right, I am going to.
Well, there is a sailboat on the beach, and apparently it was a liveaboard 38-foot monohull sailboat. What's going to happen with that boat from here on out is really the question. We're in the middle of that process, but apparently it's pretty hard up on the beach right now, laying on its side, and it's getting beat up a bit by the surf. I think both the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Coast Guard, and us, of course, are very interested in its owners removing it from the beach before it breaks itself into many pieces. So I wish them the best, because it's not easy to pull it off at this point. It's approximately at the 4-mile mark. So if you're hiking out to the light station, you come around the corner and then you can finally see the lighthouse. It's very close to that location. So if you call that the corner, it's about 100 yards closer to the lighthouse than that corner. So it's about a mile away from the lighthouse. Yeah. Yeah, Roberta.
Yeah, I'm curious with the digital visitor log, how are they contacting?
We haven't yet, and that's simply because it's so new. It's about 3 weeks old at this point. And what happens is the program will place it into an Excel spreadsheet. So we can simply email the Excel to ourselves, and then we have access with all the information. The other useful part of that is many of the grants that we apply for ask, you know, who visits the lighthouse. You know, if you're a granting organization and you're going to give us $15,000, they want to know what the audience is going to be for that project. So we can say we have people from 40 of the 50 states and 20 countries and 8,000 people, and we have all their email addresses also, so that we can send them information.
Because I know one of the biggest problems, we couldn't keep the same.
Yep.
So 9 times out of 10, the email was useless.
Yep.
We had nobody to contact and we didn't know what was wrong. So this was, okay.
it'll be much more accessible. You know, we can put it into a database and search, okay, is there anybody from Delaware, you know, who has offered to help in different ways, you know, we'll be able to access that information better than going through boxes and boxes of paper. All right, you'll see we are ready for, oh, I'm sorry, Kathy?
Yes, Devin Craig wants to know the status of the short campus.
All right, yeah, Chad,
You know.
yeah, okay. The status of the Ford is, this is the one that's been in the shop for months. I think in April, we had a problem with the Ford 150 and it went into the shop, and it's been there ever since. And we are unique in that Ford's not really sure what's wrong. We believe now the best advice that we've been given is that it needs a new transmission. There's something about the transmission that is causing a problem with the vacuum system. They've been hesitant to guarantee that it's the solution, but it's the most likely solution. And so we are proceeding to go ahead and have that transmission replaced. So our fingers are crossed that our Ford, our 150 will be back on the road in the next couple of months. You know, like anything, that new tranny is going to take 6 to 8 weeks to get in, and then however long it's going to take to install. Although it should be fairly quick because it's a remove and replace. They're not going to do a lot of maintenance on it. It's just going to be take out the old one and put in the new one, and everybody hold their fingers crossed and hope that that's the solution. It's, you know, the people who are the most knowledgeable about the truck and have been maintaining it believe that that's the right direction for us to go. So that's the direction we are going. Any other questions? All right, going to take a 15-minute break. I encourage you to check out the merchandise table, fill up your plates again, catch up with your friends, and look at our door prizes. There's also some silent auction items. You all received tickets when you came in, and you can put your tickets in whatever glass you want, the door prizes that are your favorite. And we'll be back in 15 minutes, which will be 2:20. All right, thank you. San Juan Islands, yeah, the schooner Zodiac. He's done this many times, and it sounds like an exciting trip. So I can't wait to hear about it.
Great.
Johan.
Thank you.
Kathy, did you
Thank
see
you,
the
Sarah.
note for the shirt order?
Well, it's good to be back again. It's good to be back, but I feel I've never left. You know, I'm always checking in with Chad during the time that I was not on the board, and but it's just good to be back and see good friends, friendly faces, and just wonderful. This is I have to go back in time a little bit to tell you how I. Oh, okay, there we go. I have to go back in time a little bit to tell you how I came on board with Zodiac. So we go back to 2000, 2001 when I first came. Let's try to get into the Zoom frame here. 2000, 2001 when I first came to Squim. And in 2002, I joined the Lighthouse. Okay, never thinking, I came from Los Angeles, never thinking that I would become interested in the Lighthouse. I always toured up and down the Oregon coast and always enjoyed lighthouses. But here I was invited to join the Lighthouse. Became president in 2004. And one of the first things that I got a telephone call from was a gentleman, and he was asking about how he could bring a small boat over to the lighthouse and tour it, and et cetera, what the procedure was and so on. So I told him all about it.
And he said, well, I'm from the Zodiac. Now, to me, the Zodiac is a little rubber boat. And he's talking about, he's really concerned about dragging his anchor on our cable. And I'm thinking a little boat with 4 to 6 people in it, dragging an anchor. Okay, so I humored him along. And anyhow, I told him how to do it and all that. And hung up and said, you know, give me a call when you're going out there and I'll be out there, show you around. He calls about 2 days later and he said, why don't you come with us and join our crew? I said, okay, fine. In Zodiac? He says, yeah, it's 160 foot long. It's 147 ton and it's out of Bellingham. So that started it. And I've been every year have been the lighthouse guide for the lighthouse tours of the San Juans. Generally in April, we start. This year we did it twice, in April and in October, because we had a backlog from COVID. We did it all but one year we didn't do it because of COVID. So it's a 4-day cruise and it takes you through the San Juans. And we touch on as many lighthouses as we can. Most of the time we like to get into at least 2 or 3 and tour the light on the shore. So we took a little bit this time, we took a kind of a thumb thing to find out whether who wanted to go on see lighthouses or wanted to go buy them. So they all raised their hand and they said, the majority said, we want to see as many lighthouses as we possibly can. We ended up seeing 11 lighthouses, and you're going to see all 11 at this time. But I'm going to divide the presentation up into 2 sections. The first section is about the Zodiac. So give you an idea of what it's like. And then we'll go through all 11 piece by piece. And you'll really see how wonderful New Dungeness is. I mean, when you go on one of these cruises, and then you end up at New Dungeness, I mean, it's like going to the Waldorf Astoria. I mean, it's really fantastic. And it shows what our volunteers have done, the work they've put into it, the money that we've raised, all the things that we've done really shine. But we'll get into that as we go along. So the first, there we go. There is the boat. It is 160 foot long. It is a twin-masted, gaff-rigged schooner. So it was built in 1924 for the Johnson & Johnson Band-Aid folks. It was their yacht. And during the Great Depression, they lost that yacht. And it became part of the pilot boat for, well, the last of it was a pilot boat for the Columbia Bar. And it served there for about 25 years or so. And it took a heck of a beating during that time. But it was out there, and it also had a short time during World War II. It was in the Pacific, also as a pilot boat. I don't know exactly where, but it did participate in the war effort during World War II. So the group that took the Zodiac over, I believe was in '94, and basically from the waterline up, they upgraded it and really went through it. There's a couple of videos on what they did. It was a tremendous amount of work that they went through. There. It is on the National Registry, and if you want to look, I mean, it takes you back to the early 1900s, how it was like to be on a working sailboat. Actually, they actually transported some freight during the time. Now, in the 1920s, they were still running big, large sailboats going through the straits here. The windjammers were still running. It was the tail end of it, but the windjammers still ran until 1940s, late 1940s. It would go around the Cape, even though they had the Suez Canal in. They were still going around and making that run apparently profitable. And this was then running and doing the pilot, supplying the pilot. There's the Zodiac Bell from 1924. And You can come on board and just like at New Venderness, you can be part of the crew as much as you want. You can sit back and enjoy, have your coffee, have a glass of wine, watch the crew do its work. On this particular cruise, most of them, you have 10 volunteer crew, and we had 22 guests on board. That'll give you an idea how many people we had. But you can work with it or you can not. It's kind of like the lighthouse. And work you do have to do, or you can do if you want to participate. And it's hard work. You've got 7,000 square foot of sail. Okay. And scattered over, and all got to be lifted up. And then, of course, like everything else, they all got to be put down again. So a couple of slides from that. So you can stand in line back there and grab onto the line. You notice I don't say rope, it's line for being on board. And up goes here. The foresail is going up. The mainsail is to our right. Yeah. But you can sit back and enjoy and watch other people do it. So you don't have to, but it's kind of fun to be part of it. There again is on the other side. The crew is on the left side. You can see there right at the base. And that's for young people, you know, I mean. Up goes the mainsail, Now, those of you who have sailed or motored in the San Juans, I can tell you from personal experience, and Jim, you know well, it's mostly motoring. There's very little actual sailing, but you do get a chance to see this boat under full sail. And it is an experience. The amount of power in those sails, and you actually get a chance to be at the helm and steer it. There's quite a bit of time you can spend on the helm. And the dynamic range, I've flown some fairly large aircraft, and it's between the difference between a Cessna 152 and a commercial jetliner, that when you feel that tremendous weight and power behind you, you get a chance to do that. And you have plenty of time to sit and enjoy. In this case, the sunshine, we had great weather, by the way. It was just outside, it was shirt sleeve weather the whole time. And so 4 days we have, 3 nights and 4 days. And lots of good camaraderie and just a wonderful group. There's our helm, and that's one of our guests at the helm. Sometimes you can't get them away from the helm, you know, they want to stay. And it's kind of fun. Try to keep it on a heading plus or minus 5 degrees. It takes a little getting used to. And more relaxing in the waters of the San Juans. Again, we were very lucky in this October trip. We did the trip twice, as I said earlier. We did it in April, and then we did it in October. I brought all my storm gear for October. I figured we're going to be into a fairly heavy season, so we have. I've been on board the boat in the 18 so years that I've been on it in some pretty heavy seas. So, this was a really unique trip, and so was the 10-day trip that I took before to the Desolation Sound. It's absolutely gorgeous. You don't realize how beautiful this country really is. Around here, up in BC, it's marvelous. And it's one of the reasons I came up to the Pacific Northwest was for the outdoors, for the flying, the motorcycle riding, the sailing, all of that. And there we go. That's one position that you can be on. You can be on the various sailing stations, and this is the being on the foredeck, being on watch on the foredeck, because the helm is way astern. But to give you an idea what it was like to be a sailor on board one of these ships. This is a real wide-angle shot because I wanted to get the size of the sail. It's shot with my GoPro. That's a super wide angle, so it's all kind of distorted. It'll give you an idea what it's like under sail. It doesn't heel over all that much. It's yes.
Where do you start from?
Bellingham. We start from the cruise terminal at Bellingham. And the first stop was Burroughs Island, which will go on after the trip off of Anacortes. Here's another shot with the wide angle, and the power, excuse me, the power that's behind those sails is noticeable, and you feel it. And when the sails are up, they got to come down, you got to rack them all up. And that's the gaff part. The upper part of that sail is the gaff that sticks up at an angle on the top. And I climbed up onto the deck up here and helped pick up the sail and then lash it all down. Each time you go sailing, you've got to take it up and bring it back down. There are some grunting sounds in that, but I guess we don't. And with all of the trips that I've been on, no one has ever been hurt. No one has ever, that I can remember, got seasick. So it's been a really good experience. We did have one COVID one before when all this was going on, but it was, we got through that just like with the lighthouse. It's a Caterpillar diesel. It's a 6-cylinder Caterpillar diesel that's new to the boat after they refurbished it. I get to go down there and send my mechanic. I get to go down in there, and the guy's in his shorts because it's hot down there. It's really hot. And as I'm part of the crew, I get to sleep very close to that engine when well, we don't run at night, by the way. We anchor in one of the coves and we shut down. We have a generator that runs, of course, for the kitchen and everything else. We've got a full kitchen in there, which I'll show you, and 3 heads, 3 restrooms, excuse me. The generators run till 10 o'clock at night. We turn them off, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, they come back on. That is our chart room, where, of course, where you can work the charts if you want. You can come in and we'll show you exactly what position we're in, and then you can look up at the GPS and AIS and monitor all that equipment. I also man that station for people that are interested in learning a little bit more about how the navigation works on one of the ships. And of course, we have our resident cat, Abby. I mean, the boat, a sailboat wouldn't be good without its own cat. And we had a gentleman on board, Dennis, who does all the line work. And it's just fascinating to see him work with his hand. It's the first time I've really seen somebody work in all that time, work the lines. He's great at it, from the small lines all the way to the great big ones. It's, and lines are on boats are all over the place, and they should be nice and neat. And that's one thing that we want our guests to be aware of, so you don't go tripping over them as you're walking around. But they can get kind of messy, and they're big, and there's a lot of rope when you're talking about the mechanical advantages wrapped around several times. Makes those ropes really, those lines, excuse me, really long. What you really want is that. Okay, you want, and that's what a lot of the guests participate in, is getting those lines wrapped up. The interesting thing is that whole pile has to be turned upside down so that it can be peeled off on the other side. This is one of our guests belaying one of the lines. A lot of power on that. We don't just turn you loose on that right away. We work you through that, but if you've had some experience, then there's a crew member standing right by you. So that, because if he lets go on one of those, the entire thing could come straight down. Food, okay. What would be a cruise without some good food? And we have a resident chef on board that is very, very good. She was on board the 10-day cruise that I took with the Zodiac and our two out to for the lighthouses. This is our main dining table. In back, through behind the watertight doors, is the salon. I'll show you that here in a minute. The kitchen is to the right. So we have 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and dessert after hours. The crew gets to eat last. We get to eat first. Crew, and here they are in the chart room enjoying their dinner. There's always food enough for everyone. Food and more food. And one of our guests had a salmon coupon on his fishing license. So we threw a line overboard, and lo and behold, that's the first salmon I've ever seen being caught. I didn't realize they were quite that big. I've seen them down in the streams. They're pretty good size, and the teeth are kind of like razors. And that's what it looked like. But we had him for dinner, and he was as fresh as could be, and it was delicious. I'm not necessarily a great lover of salmon. The first time recently I had salmon was with Kathy over there, and it was delicious. And this was just as good. It was fresh, and we had oysters that we got right off. Yes, I know that I have that feeling too, but that's personal preference. They roast them right on the barbecue and get them right live. And shrimp, we just throw the pots overboard and get them. Again, in the late afternoon, we get into one of the coves up in the San Juans, which we'll show you in a little bit, and go to anchor and stay there for the evening and just enjoy each other's company, or there's a number of things you can do on board. There's a group enjoying some wine before dinner. You can see in the back, if you look in the back, there are the bunks in the main salon, and my bunk happened to be on top on this one. There are 4 staterooms on either side of those. There's 2 on either sides of the stairs in the aft section there in the back. Food, delicious, and here's the dining room with the kitchen off in the upper left. This is the salon again with a wide angle, so I could get a shot of the entire room with the bunks on either side. During this trip, the weather was so good that we had a tarp put over the top, and we also had that on the Desolation Sound trip. The weather was absolutely marvelous. We had such an extended summer this time, and the barbecue hanging out over the side. There's our chef, Kaz, on the barbecue. And the waters are real calm in those inlets. There's a number of bays that you can get into, Susha, and all through there. I'll show you a map here in a little bit. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Kathy, for doing all the work on editing this and coming up with getting it all together. And there's the mother of the chef, Kaz. More food, more food, more food. I didn't gain any weight on this one. Either trip, I didn't gain any weight, but it was good. I tried. The experience, yes, because you're out in the San Juans, it's like a different world. It really is. You need to have good charts, you need to have good navigation, but it is a different world. It's just across the bay. It's like being in another country. You do see some beautiful scenes. I waited for this bird for quite a while. I was sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting, and I saw him take off, and my camera has that where you can take multiple shots, and I just held it down and got him in the takeoff roll. And so you get a chance to see him. There he is, normal coming down without having it enlarged. He's coming in for a landing there. A lot of wildlife that you can see. Of course, there are whales in the San Juans, in Haro Strait and in Rosario. They are, it depends on where the pods are and how close we are. Generally, we have time normally on the way back into Bellingham. We'll take some time and catch them if we can. That was the first time I'd actually got two killers out of the water. I have yet looking for one with a tail snap, where they come and splash down. I haven't got that yet. That was taken at about 100 yards with a telephoto lens handheld, and they're moving too. So it was quite a ways away. But in the evening, we have a dinghy sailboat on board. It can be a rowing boat or a sail. So after you've had a delicious dinner, you can take the boat out if you like. And if you're a little bit more adventurous, you can take a kayak out at night. And if you're really stupid, I mean, if you're really adventurous, you can take out a paddleboard. I still don't understand how that stands up straight on that. I think I would end up in the drink if I tried that. And some people don't get the word or are not around, have not been in the San Juans enough. Some of the crew decided to get in. I do have a few pictures of what they look like when they get back out. And I think the ice cubes are all over them. But yeah, the crew had a chance to jump in, and it was about 51 degrees. And I've been in that water. It's dangerous, almost. So I don't know whether he was praying or just trying to, whatever, he ended up going in. Some of the passengers went in too. This is what I thought a Zodiac was, okay, originally. This is the transportation to get us to shore and back. And we're all, of course, all the PFDs and everything, all that's taken care of. So this is give you a little bit of an idea of where we are. The lower part here of the slide is the peninsula, our peninsula, Swim and Port Angeles and Port Townsend, and the San Juans are the upper part. And you can see the international divide between Canada and the US. But it's all those islands in between here, and then, excuse me, Bellingham is to the upper right. Okay, now we're going to get into the actual 11 lighthouses that we visited. And the first one we stopped at was at Burroughs Island, Burroughs Light, and Burroughs Island Light Station. And it is in the process of being refurbished and upgraded. They would like to be the same as we are. And the Zodiac had been, they had a joint venture with the Zodiac, so they have a lot of experience working together. But I'll tell you something. I have been with the Zodiac since 05, I think it was, I started with them. Oh, this is Burroughs, by the way, as we're coming up to it. The the tower building is on the right, the main house is in the center, and the barn is on the left. And as you can read here, Burroughs Island Light Station activated in 1906, automated in 1972, restoration in 2011. And I was there in 2011, and I fell through the floor, the upper floor, literally up to my waist. It is a massive undertaking, massive. And I wasn't here in '94 when our group took over. But if you see what we've done with what we've done at New Dungeness compared to what it may have looked like when we started, I mean, the amount of work that we've covered over this length of time has been extraordinary. And everyone here has been part of that. Here's the ferrying back and forth to the Zodiac in the little rubber boats. They let us, there's a little bit of walking involved with this. And again, you can stay on board the boat if you like. You don't have to do any of this. This is climbing up to the light station. On the right, very much close on the right, is the baffle for the foghorn. Whoops. There we go. There's the light of the tower. It's a short, fairly short tower. And the Zodiac in the back. They don't anchor there because it's a major intersection there, and it's very deep right offshore on most of these places. So he just motors back and forth. And so they wanted to go up the tower, and the tower is closed on this because it's, and I had been up it in April, and it was extremely rickety. I mean, really rickety. It just, the amount of work, and I admire the volunteers as they're working through it. It is a huge job. I inserted this shot from the April trip. And this is their new light. So the Fresnel lenses, the Coast Guard doesn't have those beautiful lenses like we have. And particularly the one that we have on display in the museum. It's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, when you see it. But it's these new LEDs, and it's a new world. But it's totally different. Totally different. We won't see the first order like at Umpqua or second order. That's the second order light we have, isn't it? The one in the museum? Those are four. Those are four? Okay, gorgeous, gorgeous. But this is the replacement for it that's in the tower at Burroughs, but it was closed on this trip. I've got some more shots, but that's what it looks like inside. And all the wiring's got to come out. I mean, the amount of work is just, it's 4 stories. I mean, 4 floors with the basement. There's our group. And Chad, if you can take a look, the right-hand side of the building up there is the asbestos tiles that have to come off. And the Coast Guard is working with them on that. The whole house is full of asbestos. And all the windows have got to be replaced. And in 11 years, they've come a long way, but they've still got a long way to go. And on the way back home, we're going back to the boat and going back to eat again. The next one we went to is, well, that's New Dungeness. We went right to New Dungeness. Like, we came across the bay, and so I gave the guests the chance to see a real lighthouse. And boy, did it make, did I push? There it is. This is what the lighthouse looks like. A little cheating. This was on a cruise that I took to Alaska up there, and I'm photographing back. Obviously the sun is out, and I had to wait just for the moment so the light would show in there. That's what it looks like from a cruise ship as you're going by. And if you ever do that trip, be sure and stop. You have to, most of the times you hit it just about dinner time as you're going out. So you gotta get out and take a look at it. Gotta get my order here. There we are going ashore. That's what it looks like from the bay, which we mostly see. That's the most often shot. Oh, that's the model that we have here. I was so impressed with that little model because it's so authentic. And that was on our lounge table in the main room. And our bell. Which I'm so glad to get out of the shop. And it's really good. This takes me back a little bit to 2004, 2005. One of the other things that happened to me when I was president, I got a call from the lighthouse and said, the Coast Guard's it's here, they're here, and they're here to take out the foghorn and the bell and the light. And I went, uh-oh. this is going to be a real problem. And they got this foghorn. They were going to come back and get the light, and I raised holy hell. I went to the politicians. I went everywhere, and we were able to save the light and actually get it. I remember and have it on 24 hours a day now. So, and I'll show you what happens to a light when they do that here. That next couple of another light that they hold. This is the first time I had a chance to see our new visitor center display. Very, very impressive, and seemed to be working very well. That's a great addition. There's just a shot with the Zodiac in the background, and had a beautiful day. There's our whole group. There's all 20 of us, 20 plus of us in a group shot. I would have liked to have taken a lot more shots, but I was kind of the guide for this thing, and it's like herding cats. And I did get, everyone got a chance to go up in the light. And that evening at dinner, I'll tell you, the comments were wow, and it really hit the mark. The next light was Point Wilson. We went down the coast, basically east, a little southeast, right there at around the corner is Port Townsend. So here we are looking at Port Wilson Light. In the background is the tower building on the left, and the administrative buildings, I guess housing is on the right. That is not open all the time, and also is not anywhere near the condition that our light is in. Close-up shot of it. The breakwater is in great need of repair, and lots of them. I don't. Are they going through a rebuilding process there, Chad? They are slowly. Yeah, it's a very slow process. And that's it from the other side, a little bit better sun angle there. The tower on the left is for Seattle approach, or Seattle traffic, which governs all the traffic coming in for the commercial ships, the big steamers and cruise ships that come through the straits. It's just like in flying, it's like ATC air traffic control, very similar to that. The next slide was Marrowstone Island the next morning. By the way, in the evening, we set anchor right at Port Townsend, right between the marina and the ferry. So, and we stayed there for the night, and people could go ashore if they wanted to, but the food was too good on board, they stayed on board. So, and we had a beautiful sunset that night. Next morning, we went to Marrowstone, which is actually a first for me. I've gone by it before in a cruise ship or something, but it was the time I really got the chance to see it. I camped in Fort Flagler on the side. It's a great campsite, by the way, right on the bay overlooking Port Townsend. But anyhow, first time I got a chance to take a look at it. There it is. The tower building is the left, a little to the left of center, the small square building, and it just has a tower structure on it, like a antenna tower. And the larger building in back. The interesting thing I saw, Chad, by the way, was on the left, and I have another shot of that. All the sandbags they had in place for the. Yeah, it looked like. I think the next shot. Well, this is another shot of it. And again, it's I call it a drive-by. It's a sail-by, really, but. We went by, I was interested in it because they put on all those sandbags. Those are big ones. I mean, they're good size in diameter. So they must have the same problem that Point Wilson has. I hit two of these at once, I'm in trouble. Admiralty Head. Now here is an oxymoron for a lighthouse. There is no bell, there's no foghorn, and there's no light. So that's what they wanted. The Coast Guard wanted to do to New Dungeons. They wanted to turn us into that. We saved that back in the days when. They have a beautiful museum there. I haven't been there in years, but they have a beautiful museum. But it's how can you have a lighthouse without a light? You know, there's something wrong with that little thing. We went on to Canada. We went across the bay. We went all the way west to Victoria, to the entrance at Trial Island. During this COVID business, we had real trouble of getting into Canada, Canadian waters. With the, I mean, really heavy duty fine just to go over the international, with the Zodiac, go over the international boundary. Now it had opened up again. And so we were able to go over there. So we went over to Trial Island and again did a sail by there the next morning. No, not the, yeah, the next morning. And that's what the lighthouse looks like. You'll notice the lighthouses in Canada are in better shape than most of ours because they do take better care of their lights. It looks like to me, I haven't been near them, but it sure looks like it. And the fact that their lighthouses, as you will see coming up here, are basically steel structures, steel frame structures. Our lighthouses were way before the era of steel construction. It's bricks in ours. These are, there's a steel structure under there, I would presume. So that's the entrance to Victoria Harbor, Trial Island Light. The next one is a little bit east of there into the entrance of Harrow Strait, and it is Discovery Island Light, and it's also in Canada. You'll see the zigzag line is the border line. There is the light, and again, the same structure as before, a lot of solar power, and the keeper's quarters were back up in the hills up there behind. But well maintained, looks like well maintained. The next one is Lime Kiln up Harrow Strait on the San Juan Island side. It is out there, it's pretty isolated. You can go to Friday Harbor and you can walk across to get it. You can walk across the island to get to it, but it's quite a walk. And it was for the lime to make concrete. And if you go into Friday Harbor, you'll see the kilns against the wall there. And just to the left of here is some of the lime deposits, however they got them out. I don't know how they got them out or got them transported. That's another issue. That's the lime kiln light. And it is a functioning aid to navigation. Again, another shot with the quarters in the background there in the forest. Next light, that's Lime Kiln. Going the wrong way. That is Turn Point. And that's one of the better lighthouses, the nicer kept as far as that's, I'm sure it is. Yeah, it's Turn Point. There, yeah, you can't get to it from the ocean, from the water side. You can go over on the other side of the bay and walk across. It's a nice walk. It's a little steep at the end, and then you can come around here. The quarters are here on the left, upper left a little bit, and there's actually a barn there. They had horses and everything, and they didn't have it when I was there. This was, I mean, when I walked there was back in April. There's the light up close. It is Turn Point. It is a significant turn in the international boundary. And I'd say about a 30-degree turn, something like that. It looks to me. And it looks pretty well maintained. With the barn in the left side, kind of fun to walk around in there. They've got some nice placards and everything. But it's mostly all electronic. Cameras and things like that.
Where's the light?
There's not that I could find. It's a good question. There's probably a light in there somewhere because it is Turn Point light. Yeah. But do you know that, Chad, at all? I don't. There's a light. There must be a small one like we've got, and I can't. There is an LED array. Is it one of these flat pancakes again? Probably. So I'm going backwards and forwards again. Sorry. There's the barn back there. It's a good hike, and I will show you next where we are. This is Stewart Island, And if you look in the middle upper, you'll see a green little boat. That is our AIS point. Turn point is on the left of that all the way on the left right there. And you can walk across that island. And it's a good 45-minute to an hour walk one way and then down and then back up again. And that is Provost Bay, and Reed Harbor is on the other side. So those are two inlets. And that's about as far northwest as we got on this trip. And East Point Light. Now we're crossing over into Canada and going to the other side of Turn Point and looking at East Point. And in Canada, I hit two of these. There it is, right there. That's East Point Light. We'll come a little bit closer to it, and that's what it looks like. Basically a steel structure. A steel structure. It's a relatively modern light, and fairly generic looking. The next one is Peytos. It's one of my favorite lights. It's the light station at Peytos Island. It's again right at a confluence of currents, so it can get quite tumultuous when the currents are changing in there. And it is also reasonably well maintained, I think. It's a small light. The quarters were right behind in here. That's all been taken down. In the middle of it, there were some buildings. All that's left is the foundation. There's a nice cove you can go into there and camp. There's a nice, have you been in there, Jim? In the, there, okay. There's a nice, for boating, it's great. It's a secluded little harbor that holds maybe 3 or 4 boats. And you can, right above Reed Harbor. And you can camp there. There are tent campers and kayakers that go out. Very, very nice island. And there it is up close. You can see it's reasonably well taken care of, but it's unmanned. Most of these are unmanned. The volunteers come out and they're not open for tourism or anything like that. And again, it's the old structure of brick and mortar as opposed to steel. Another shot of it from a different angle as we went by. Well, back home. That is 11 lighthouses, which is a record for us. And the highlight by far was New Dungeness. And if it wasn't for you, all of us together, all of the whole family, the hours that we've spent and the donations that we've had, it all has paid off. It is the gem. It's the Ritz of the lighthouses that I've seen. And I love to go down the Oregon coast too, but this is absolutely remarkable. So I think we can all be very, very proud of what we've done and what we're doing. We've come through some very turbulent times, from fire in trucks to the COVID, to the road being washed out. I can go on and on and on with some things that we've all just come through and worked our way through. And it's remarkable. The organization is extremely well run. Of the quite a few of the organizations that I belong to, 3 of them stand out. One is the New Dungeness Lighthouse. 2 is Rotary, which I've been a member of for 40 plus years. The clubs are independent. And number 3 is the Port Angeles Symphony, which is also very well endowed and I'm on the board of directors for that. So yes, you can be very proud of what we represent and what we've done. Sarah, thank you for doing all the work. Kathy, any questions? You can come on board the boat next April.
There we go.
If you want to, call me or use my name, say, I'm with New Dungeness, Johan recommend. Not that I'm trying to get any kudos, if not, I can get you on board. Ooh. And I would probably, we were sold out early this beginning of this year, so I wouldn't let it go beyond January before you register for the schedule hasn't come out yet, but generally in April.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Johan, for that great presentation. I kind of felt like I was already on that boat. Anybody else? That was pretty cool. Thank you. All right. I would guess that most of the people here are probably already members, but it could be that some of you are just visiting for the great coffee. I'm not really sure. And you heard we were going to have 50% off on t-shirts maybe. But as both Johan and Chad brought out, we really run on volunteer efforts. The lighthouse, New Dungeness Lighthouse looks pretty good at 165 years, but that doesn't come easy. I like to say that our lighthouse runs on elbow grease, and many of us are there year after year after year to grease that thing. And we work hard out there. Many of you may have walked out when we've been working, and you see us working hard. You might not see us sitting back and enjoying the fruits of our labor. But at the end of the day, after we've finished our week of work, it's nice just to step back and go, wow. You saw the list that Chad had, 3 pages with very small font. We're looking at that. That's a list that goes taped up on the mirror at the beginning of work week every week. And we always add things that we did that weren't on the list. So frequently it becomes a 4 or 5 page document, and it's just amazing. It's kind of the idea that many hands really do make light work. Next thing I know, I'm turned around and Linda's vacuuming the window wells, and somebody's scooping muck out of the pond. It's just little things people notice. We go out there usually for a big job. This year was the technology changes around the logbook, but a whole lot of other work gets done. Oh. Zoom. Yes. Okay, now that got me all confused. That's okay. But work weeks aren't for everybody. A lot of people can't devote a full week to spend out there. We also have opportunities to do small jobs, go out for a day or two, just one small thing, scraping and painting gates, or there's always painting to do. No matter what else we do, we are always doing some kind of scraping and painting. And that's what makes the place look so good. And we're lucky that nobody falls through the floor, because we're out there paying attention to that floor. Maybe in 1994, when we took the place over, there were some squeaky spots in the floor, but we pay enough attention, and we're there often enough, and just doing the little things that keep it running fairly smoothly. But there's a lot of work to be done that is off-site. There are volunteer sheets on your tables. There are lists of things that you can do. You might be interested in doing something like newsletter editor, grant writing, scheduling for festivals. What's that? Driving. Yes, driving. You saw pictures of the trucks driving down the beach. It's kind of special going out there. I especially like taking people out there that are going out for the first time, and they're youngsters. A 7-year-old has had to wait 2 years to finally get their opportunity to come up, because their parents made that reservation January 2nd, 2 years ago. And in the life of a 7-year-old, 2 years is their whole memory. So they're excited about going out there. They don't know what it's going to be like. And so they're like bouncing on the seat, getting out there. And then when you pick them up on the way back, the same thing. They're all excited. They want to tell all their friends about what they did. And they're excited about being a piece of the history 165-year-old history now of this beautiful place. You know, sometimes I'll be out at Kleinspit or the county park, somewhere where people are gathered and they can see our lighthouse. The best time to go is when it's starting to be sunset and they can start seeing the light and really pay attention to the light and just how beautiful it is. And, you know, oohs and ahs, and everybody's snapping a lot of pictures. And, you know, the lighthouse is beautiful. It's picturesque. It's probably one of the most identifiable, recognizable symbols of our entire area. A lot of people see it from a long ways away, but I gotta say, she looks even better close up. So if you want the chance to come out, spend time out there, drive out there, take keepers out there to stay, you really get a chance to see it in a different light. Many of you have been out there before, and you might wait for your turn to come up, you know, once a year to go out for a week. But there's a lot of things that you can do, little jobs, big jobs, all jobs go towards keeping the light shining. And so I invite you, if you have any interest at all, fill out the form. We will find a niche for you to fill. So I thank you for your interest, your participation. And I think that I want to thank all the volunteers that helped today and help all the time. And I want to adjourn the meeting for the Zoom people before we do the door prizes. So are there any questions or comments? Chad?
When did the reservations open up for 2024?
When do the reservations open up for 2024? Those of you who watch those reservations, you know we post in early December what weeks are available. So they open up for reservation requests at 12:01 a.m. on January 2nd in 2023. So take a look in early December, pick out the weeks that you want. Most people like to say choice A, B, or C, 1, 2, or 3. Give Chad some options because many of the most popular weeks get snapped up by the person who got ahead of you in line. All right. Yes, Johan.
Don't ignore the winter months. I love those storms.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yes, as he says, don't ignore the winter months. A lot of people, when I'm out there, they'll say, what's your favorite time to come? And I say, well, don't tell anybody, but it's February. You know, it's great being out there that time of year. A lot of people love the constant visitors that they get in June, July, August. That's fun too, but it's a different kind of fun. It's pretty quiet in the winter time, and that's a pretty special place to be. You saw pictures of the snow. Man, there's nothing like being at the lighthouse with snow on the ground. It is really unusual. So. All right, I am going to, are there any questions, Kathy, from the Zoom folks? Nothing in the chat? All right. All right, I will adjourn for the Zoom folks, and then we will do the door prize. Bye, Zoomers.